geeks and geekettes, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, gats and kittens, comic book fans all over the world. Welcome once again to Ask Chuck Dixon, where you get to ask me, a world-renowned, world-respected, world-celebrated, almost award-winning comic book writer. You get to ask me what I do for a living, about what I do for a living, and what I do for a living is I write comic books for my sins. Alex Berry asks, why do you think that sports comics like Roy of the Rovers or Tough of the Track were so successful in Britain, but sports comics in America never really flourished? Comics about rugby and soccer, and are there comics about cricket? Or if anyone in the UK is listening to this, let me know. Are there or were there ever a comic series about cricket? Because I want to read that. Anyway, continuously successful, in Roy of the Rovers being the most famous, but many series appearing in the weekly comics surrounding sports teams, and they were just straight up sports stories. About I haven't read a lot of them, but the little bit that I did, team rivalries, tensions within the team, things like that. And, it's all good, entertaining stuff. Now, why did the sports genre in comics take off in Britain? I don't know. I don't know enough about, British culture to understand why sports comics took off. I would imagine it's because there was never any effort to create sports comics here in the United States. There were comics based on sports. Will Eisner created one, and I think Joe Palooka ran as comics at Harvey in the 1950s. But other than that, I can't think of a whole lot of other sports-based comics. And there's the problem. They weren't creating them, so they couldn't get a following, and there was no one earnestly writing about sports the way they were in Britain. And there's a bunch of genres which were popular in Britain that, never really caught on here. The war comic genre, which, was popular here for quite a while, a few decades, much more popular in Britain, continues to be popular in Britain, in the UK, and also the boarding school stories. Boarding school stories is a whole genre of fiction in weekly comics and weekly serials that ran in British boys' adventure weeklies and girl weeklies for decades and decades. We never really had a boarding school culture here, so we didn't have that. This is the key to the success of Harry Potter. Harry Potter is a boarding school mystery, a boarding school adventure story with magic. And it took off here in the United States because of the magic part, not because we related to boarding schools. I don't know. I don't have an answer other than the fact that there was no earnestly produced sports comics, no real effort. Here in the United States, every once in a while, they take a shot at it. Weird comics like Strange Sports Stories from DC, which of course features a gorilla playing baseball, because gorillas are never far below the surface at DC Comics. They're gonna emerge eventually. It's part of the charm of DC, this fascination with gorillas. There you go. What you encourage, you get more of, and no one was encouraging sports comics here in the U.S. Twin Spin, how about that? Congratulations, Alex, on your first Twin Spin. You mentioned African mercenary movies that you like Dogs of War was your favorite, and some other. Maybe I missed it, but you didn't list Wild Geese. What didn't you like about it? I didn't like it because the cast was too damn old to be in a movie about African mercenaries. Richard Burton Richard Burton wasn't old, but he had aged. Richard Burton was, I believe, only in his 50s when he died, though he looked 80. You know, the ravages of alcohol, which didn't help Richard Harris either, another member of this cast. That's Hardy Kruger, right? Is the one all the way on the left, and Roger Moore. They weren't too old for this movie, but Burton and Harris, just obviously, these guys were not fit enough to be running around the jungle as presented in the movie, and particularly Burton with his crippling alcoholism literally made it difficult to film him, and film him in any kind of an action role. Now, a little aside, I think I've mentioned this before. Whenever you see Roger Moore's character running in a movie, it's never Roger Moore. Because Roger Moore feels that maybe rightly, maybe wrongly, that he looks very awkward when he runs. And so whenever you see a character played by Roger Moore running, it's a body double. It's not Roger Moore. He has a guy who runs for him. But yeah, that's my main objection to it. Plus, I just don't think it's a very good movie. It has fits and starts. It doesn't have that great a through story, and I don't think it's terribly accurate vis-a-vis African mercenaries. Triple spin. You had your first twin spin night. You get your triple spin. You must be very proud. You'll have a lot to talk about around the dinner table tonight. Alex Berry again with, what are your thoughts on when black and white comics are colorized after the fact? Is it like colorizing a black and white movie, or is it different for some reason? Most prominent in my mind is the Al Williamson Star Wars black and white newspaper strip that Dark Horse re-released in color. Yeah, it's much like making a black and white movie into color. A black and white movie is filmed to be in black and white. And if you know anything about the history of cinema, there are absolutely, there were brilliant cinematographers who specialized in black and white. And when you colorize them, you lose all of their work, and you lose the intention of the cinematographer, and as well as losing the intention of the director. When you colorize the work, you are unintentionally de-emphasizing the features and the elements on the screen that the director and cinematographer wanted you to see. You're either de-emphasizing them or somehow diffusing the effect of shadows, focus, framing, all the rest of it. It just sort of like, because these things are not being recolored by any kind of an expert, any kind of real artist, largely, especially these days, it's done through AI. And AI, let's face it, is stupid. It's not smarter than us. It's stupid. It's just a machine. It only knows what we tell it, and has to guess about the rest, and it's not very good at guessing. Same thing goes for black and white comics. I mean, look at this hatchwork, these shading. I assume this is Dua shade that Al Williamson was using, and you lose all of this. You lose all of this effect in color. You lose the depth, the contrast that Al Williamson was going for, and it's just not right to color them. I understand why they color them, because you've got people that are Philistines who only want to see comic books in color, but it's kind of a travesty. I mean, you look at somebody like Roy Crane, great newspaper comic strip artist. If you were to color this panel, this carefully shaded and composed and craft tinted panel, you lose everything. You lose the depth, you lose the form, and it would just be a color mishmash. It would just be pedestrian. Whereas this composition and the way it's drawn, the simplicity of it, and the elegance of it, it needs to be seen in black and white. And guys like Wally Wood, when they knew they were drawing for black and white, just went all out. I mean, Wally Wood went all out all the time, but if he knew it wasn't going to be covered up with color, if he knew that it was all up to him with his pen and his brush to bring this piece to life, you got 100% Wally Wood. Same thing for guys like Alex Toth, guys like Angelo Torres. You look at the early Warren comics, and you can see, these guys were reveling in the fact that they were able to work in black and white, that their work was going to be seen unaltered, unadulterated by the reading public. And, they did a lot of experimentation, everything else. I mean, you take panels like this and color them, you lose everything. You lose all the charm. So yeah, I think if it's in black and white, it needs to remain in black and white. If it was drawn to be in black and white, it needs to be in black and white. So, Brandon Mosley, what would your advice be for writing a faith-based character story without coming off as preachy to the reader? How would you make the reader understand the basic faith aspect of the story or character without feeling like they were point blank reading a sermon? I think that's, unlike Jesus preached, if you're writing faith-based stuff, sometimes you've got to, cover your light with a bushel. You don't want to come off as preachy. You're going to turn off your audience. I always believe that, as a Christian myself, I don't proselytize. I don't believe in that, evangelizing, testifying to people. I think that if you lead a life by example, and people can see, hey, he's a pretty good guy. What's his underpinnings? What motivates him? Why does he do things the way that he does them? And it's because of my faith. It's because I got a set of rules I follow. I got a mores. I got a moral compass laid down by Scripture, and my religious beliefs. That said, recently I talked about the comic Treasure Chest. And Treasure Chest is an excellent example of faith-based entertainment that never proselytizes, never sermonizes. These were produced by the Catholic Church. They came out every other week during the school year. They were widely distributed, millions and millions of copies. And generally they told stories that were meant for younger readers to enjoy. And they were well crafted and well told. And they followed the teachings and the tenets of the Catholic Church without ever stating that. The characters in the stories never, directly referred to their faith, never directly referred to any, teachings from the New Testament or from the Catechism or anything else, but they lived lives by example. They lived their lives, the heroes of the stories anyway, lived their lives by example. And a lot of what Treasure Chest presented were stories of people who had faith and found strength in faith, and they were courageous and had the courage of their convictions and all the rest of it. Characters, God doesn't appear in these stories as a deus ex machina to save the day, or you don't see characters, preaching to one another. You don't see bad people presented in a light where they are redeemed through religion. I mean, none of this appears in the Treasure Chest stories, and yet the lessons are clear. The point of view is clear in these stories without doing that. And I think that's largely, because of these stories humanize the characters, and that's what you have to do first. You have to humanize and make the characters relatable, then set them in motion. And if you're trying to present a certain viewpoint of faith or whatever, you do it through that character, and the reader will intuit it. They may not learn it directly because you're not directly preaching to them, you're not quoting Scripture at them, but they will intuit. Hey, I mean, so many of us growing up, we had role models. We had our parents or relatives or people that we knew. Maybe you had a teacher that was a role model or whatever, but an awful lot of us, especially if you're listening to something like this, your role model was a fictional character. I mean, for me, Batman and Tarzan, in addition to my dad, were my role models. What would they do in this situation? And that's largely what you have to do in a faith-based comic if you're trying to get your point across. And I would be loath to, or remiss, I should say, not to mention my good buddy Sergio Cariello and his tremendous work on the Action Bible, which is a faith-based comic, but which does present, without any degree of subtlety, the teachings of the New Testament. And but Sergio, this is his life's mission, literally. He's had an enormous amount of success with this, and I'm happy for him because he basically found this project And the publishers are very happy with them. His reading public is happy with them. The Action Bible and its many, many variations and spin-offs sold in millions and millions of copies. And I'm proud of Sergio, and I'm glad for him, because this will always be his career highlight, and he brings a lot to this work, and it's worth taking a look at. Although it is not. Sergio does not hide his light under a bushel. So, hey, have you subscribed? If you haven't, please do. If you have, check and make sure you're still subscribed. I'm inching closer to 10,000 subscriptions. I'd like to get there, but it doesn't matter. In the end, as long as you folks are here, I'm happy. We don't need anybody else, right? But if you are here and you listen every week or watch every week, make sure you're still subscribed. Michael Scambati. Just curious, did you like V for Vendetta, the book or film? I enjoyed the film adaptation, while I acknowledge the book is more left to the reader who's good or bad, where the film is very clear cut that V is the good guy. I read the comics. I think they appeared, man, what was it? A comic called Warrior? It was a UK comic that I subscribed to. And I remember reading the original adventures there, and I enjoyed them. It's, it's Alan Moore. I didn't agree with most of what he was putting forth, but I appreciated the story. I liked the story. I appreciated the skill and the storytelling. David Lloyd's highly detailed artwork. So yeah, I dug the comic. Now the movie I never saw, because I really, the idea of seeing a movie where Natalie Portman gets physically abused held no appeal for me. So it seemed like misery porn to me. So I really didn't want to go see that. Hey, twin spin for Mr. Oh, no, it's not a twin spin. Was that twin spin? I got to go back and check. This is my process, people. This is behind the scenes. No, it's not a twin spin. Why did I think that was a twin spin? Anyway, maybe Thomas will earn it. What did you think of Carl Potts and Jim Lee's tenure on Punisher War Journal? I really liked it. I mean, I was yet to write the Punisher, and I was doing a lot of work with Carl at the time. He was graciously allowing me to write Alien Legion, and we had a terrific relationship, working relationship, and everything else. I was very jealous that him and Mike Baron were writing the Punisher, because I desperately wanted to write Frank Castle. I really liked it. And of course, Jim Lee's artwork. I remember Jim Lee, meeting Jim Lee, young kid with a dream. And everybody was super impressed with this guy's work. I mean, he was so young, but so skilled. And, we were all grooving on that. So yeah, just beautiful stuff. And I love, Carl insisted on a authenticity with the weaponry, and Jim Lee brought it. I mean, he drew, because too many times prior to Mike Baron and Carl Potts and Jim Lee and guys like that, Bill Reinhold, guys like that coming onto the title, the guns it wasn't that much attention paid to the weaponry or how accurate it was. But Carl is a stickler for this stuff, I should say. And I like Carl's stories, and I thought there's some really cool stuff in it. My only problem with Carl's stories were he didn't write the Punisher as a slob hero. And at the same time, Mike Baron is writing the regular Punisher title. Carl was on Punisher War Journal, and Mike's writing him as a slob hero. And that's the Punisher I liked, and I continued that tradition. Carl's version was closer to the Executioner, Don Pendleton's Executioner, which, is the, godfather of the Punisher. The Punisher is liberally lifted from Don Pendleton's Executioner paperback novels. There's no question about that. No one thought that Punisher was an original idea. It was just a Marvel's take on the Executioner character. And Carl's was closer to that model than the slob hero, the more ruthless, nasty Frank Castle character that Mike Baron would write and I would go on to write, and eventually Garth Ennis. So yeah, I mean, I dug him. It was great stuff. I like everything Carl does. I just had that little quibble with that little portion of his approach to the character. But the character was still evolving, and Carl played a part in that evolution with the attention to guns and the level. He really ramped up the level of action. He really took it to Gonzo level with helicopter battles and tanks and all the rest of it, the military ordnance. So yeah, we all owe Carl a debt of gratitude. And of course, he was the one of the guiding forces and one of the reasons why the Punisher became a popular character in the 80s and through the 90s. Hey, one more thing. Movie recommendations. People ask me for them. Let's move up to, I believe, 1984, 83. Repo Man. If you've never seen it, it's an Alex Cox movie. It was fully funded by Mike Nesmith of the Monkees, and it's an independent film, but it's about repo men in Los Angeles, the guys who repossess your car when you get behind on the payments. But it's much more than that. It's a bizarre, absurdist comedy with a lot of like science fiction elements to it in the background. It's like a Roger Corman movie if a Roger Corman movie was an art film. And the cool thing about Repo Man is it was one of the first films. I mean, it was released theatrically, but it was primarily made to be sold on video. It was one of the first made-for-video movies and did spectacularly well in rentals. And it sort of showed it paved the way for all of the other independent productions that would show up on video. Because if I don't know if any of you were old enough to remember when video first came out, this is before Blockbuster, before there were even video stores. You had to go to like camera stores, or we went to our local Acme supermarket and rented, tapes. This was a big hit. This made a lot of money, sold an awful lot of tapes back in the day. So it's not only a fun film, a wacky film, lots of great Tracy Walters in it and Harry Dean Stanton. It's got some terrific character actor bits in it. But it's also somewhat historic. The same year, Pope of Greenwich Village. This is a based on a novel. It was Eric Roberts and Mickey Rourke are two cousins living in New York. They're working in the restaurant trade, but they get the idea that they're tired of being pissed on by life, and they're gonna commit a robbery. And they hook up with career criminal Kenneth McMillan, who does a terrific character job in this movie, and they're going to steal money. And of course, as so often happens in movies like this, they find out they probably wouldn't have stolen that money if they knew whose money it was. And lots of things happen. It's a funny movie. It's a suspenseful movie. It's got some great dialogue, some great scenes, and it's a terrific snapshot of New York City in that period. Eric Roberts goes a little over the top in his performance, but it's the kind of character he's playing. And Mickey Rourke makes quite an impression in one of his early starring roles. And Daryl Hannah is there as well. Okay, Code of Silence. This is 84 for sure. But Chuck Norris's best movie, hands down. It's directed by Andrew Davis. Chuck Norris is a cop detective in Chicago. It's all shot in Chicago on location, and of course he's Chuck Norris. He's the toughest guy. He'll shoot you just for looking at him the wrong way, and punching and kicking and fighting and all that stuff. Lots of great Chicago area character actors, including one of the earliest screen performances by Dennis Farina, where he actually gets to have lines, and he's really good. But the cast is great. It's directed by Andrew Davis, who was on quite a roll, eventually directing The Fugitive with Harrison Ford winning I believe he won an Academy Award for directing that movie. If not, he was nominated. It won Best Picture that year. So this was an early effort by Davis, kind of elevating a B movie level plot up to something special. It goes totally gonzo at the end, but it's got some great fight scenes. It's got some great comedy set pieces or humor set pieces. And Norris isn't given a lot to say, which is always better. The less Chuck talks, the better Chuck is. And it's got Henry Silva as the bad guy, and Henry Silva's just eating his roll up. He's just so evil. He's so evil incarnate. I always wonder, what was Henry Silva like in real life? And I have it on good authority. He's a very nice man. In contrast to the bastards that he played over and over again in crime films and westerns. Every once in a while, a question comes up that maybe you didn't know to ask. In a recent streaming I did with Eric July in support of The Horseman, which you can still order, someone in the Super Chat asked that they would love to see a sample script by me. Would it be possible to see a sample script? And I said, well, yeah. If you get a hold of me at my email, and I gave the email out, I'll send you a sample script. And then I realized, hey, all of my loyal listeners here at Ask Chuck Dixon probably don't know that this would be available to them, that I would be willing to email them a sample script or several sample scripts. I think about a dozen people, Rippaverse fans, asked me, and I sent each one of them three scripts from different characters, different genres, different periods in my writing, so they could see what a comic book script, at least as written by me, looks like. So if you want one, if you, dear listener, want a copy of one of my scripts, I'm going to ask one favor from you, and longtime listeners are going to know what that favor is. I would like you to send a donation to St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. It's a terrific organization. Send $1, send $5, send whatever, and then email me, and I'll give you the email in a minute, and tell me you donated, and I'll send you some scripts, samples, and there'll be full scripts from different periods, and I'll send them to you, in exchange. And it's an honor system thing. You're on your honor, but you don't want to cheat the kids. If you don't know about St. Jude, it's a hospital where terminally ill or children facing the most dire health circumstances you can imagine are treated for free. Their parents never receive a bill. It's all people like you donating, here and there, that keep this hospital running. It's got a tremendous history. It's got a tremendous track record for saving the lives of children, and in most cases, their last hope, their only hope for survival. And they've got a terrific track record. They've got an army of dedicated nurses and doctors. And like I said, it's all free. The parents are never sent a bill. So, what's more worthwhile than that? What's more worthy of your shekels than that? So if you want a script, contact me, as you well know, at brunobookstore@gmail.com. brunobookstore@gmail.com. Make your donation. Email me and say, Chuck, I gave some money to the kids, and I'll send you some script samples. I don't know why I never thought of this before. But anyway, that's it for me this week. I want to thank you for listening. I want to thank you for watching, subscribing, and I especially want to thank you if you will donate to St. Jude, which I have no connection to. It's just a charity, I admire because of the tremendous work they've done. And they are a boon to civilization, and obviously a boon to all those, thousands of children that they've helped. And I'll see you all down the road.